According to estimates of British Petroleum, the fossil energy sources is being used exponentially. They assure that in the last 15 years, of production has exceeded a trillion cubic meters. That is twice the energy need of Europe in one single year. The oil and gas report by Energy Transition Outlook about what is consumed and expended since 2026, natural gas will be the first energy source before oil and would represent the fourth energy source for this year. How does this resource advance in Latin America as important producers of gas? How many battles will have to be made to control it? The United States accuses Russia of controlling Europe through gas, and the Russian gas duct seems key to determine the political end of an allegedly dependent Europe. Russia assures that it exports up to 200 billion cubic meters per year, and nobody provides services as it does. Germany is happy because it could be some kind of regional distributor, and the policies energy security, the dispute for gas is our critical move today. The recent interview granted to Gazprom, the vice president of Russian company Gazprom reported that the consortium would start in a few months, 2019, the land stretch of the Turk stretch in Turkey in response of the failure of the negotiations with Brussels because of political discrepancies to raise the false string that Russia would take under the Black Sea through the Balkans. Mbede said that upon this, a few months would be enough to start operating this work. It also talks about the possibilities of extending it to transit countries like Bulgaria and Italy, and all these advances are taking place in the midst of threats. Russia's position is very clear, however. Gazprom is working in the fields, and gas production is 2.5 trillion cubic meters. Now they are talking about gas extraction that could be doubled. For Putin, U.S. sanctions for economic control are counterproducing. It's not the first time he says it. Sanctions are counterproducing and senseless actions, especially against a country like Russia. And it's not the U.S. president's position. It is the position of the so-called establishment in general. I hope, in any case, that someday our U.S. partners will understand that that policy has no future, and we start a normal cooperation. We will now move to the webpage news front under the title War for Natural Gas, Israeli Invasion and the Gaza Coast. This investigation allows us to understand this conflict in a more integral way. After the Israeli invasion to Gaza, the oil wells were seized by Israel. 1 year after the Israel nationalized Leviathan in front of Israel coast. At that time, the gas field was the most prominent ever found in the sub-explored area that covers already 3,000 square meters in this area. Together with Tamar field in the same place discovered in 2009, the perspectives are huge energy bonanza for Israel with Houston in Texas, that is, and other U.S. partners. In all the eastern Mediterranean coast that goes from Egyptian Sinai from Syria, which is an area that has great gas and oil reserves. It's important to relate gas reserves on the Gaza coast with recent massacres performed by forces addressed against the Palestinian people that have offshore gas pits. The invasion in 2008 by Israeli forces to the Gaza Strip are related to the control and property of strategic offshore reserves, gas reserves. 60% of gas reserves along the Gaza coast belong to Palestine. This investigation is very interesting and helps us understand if gas is or not a geopolitical control weapon and a way of enforcing other countries. Our recommendation today is on La Vanguardia, Spanish journal, Geostrategic and Global Panorama, Geostrategy and Global Energy Panorama. The large energy challenges have not stopped demanding global and cooperative approaches. This, in a game with the planet's ability and balanced development in broad regions of the world. Energy is and will continue being a key piece for the life of society. Two powers, United States and Russian Federations, are disputing the Middle East, which has the world's largest gas reserves. Washington's commercial sanctions against Russia and China relive the fire of mistrust of the Chinese-Russian Strategic Association against the results of the U.S. empire. Large energy corporations are asking for cooperative efforts and the planet's balance, equilibrium. How each stakeholder is moving, is making its moves. We had the first data in our first move. Russia says it does not pretend to monopolize the gas provision as the United States seems to, and some European Union seem to present. Hansalora from Moscow. Greetings for you and our viewers. According to Russian President Putin, Russia has no intention of monopolizing the gas supply to European countries. Nevertheless, Donald Trump has used the alleged dependence of European countries on Russian gas, especially on Gazprom, talking about the energy security of the European countries, with the aim to impose the natural gas produced in the south of the United States. Nevertheless, Russia has also applied, according to the Minister of Energy, to open the way to competition. We must remember that Nord Stream 2, the gas duct that would go from Russia under the Baltic Sea and transport 5 trillion square kilometers of gas to Germany. Russia has 61% of the export, and France and UK as well. Nevertheless, the Eurasian nation has important elements in Turkish Stream, that is the gasoduct that would go to Turkey, also that has not been performed until now because of the Korean Peninsula crisis. This gas duct would also aim to South Korea and passing by North Korea. We must also explain now the actions by the U.S. that, with these and other political pretexts of the alleged Russian interference in U.S. presidential elections, the case of Sergei Skripal has used not only by the United States but by Europe as well to present sanctions against Russia and energy corporations, especially Gazprom. The last sanctions were imposed in September against 7 individuals, including the blast list, and also companies that are important among energy companies. Russia opens the way to the competition, as Russian President has in play in his meeting with Donald Trump. And on November 11, this will be an important topic at the time of discussing gas and sanctions, when the meeting between U.S. President and Russian President will take place in Paris. This is all for today. Thank you. November 11, we have it on our route sheet. The Middle East, as we said, is a key region for its hydrocarbons reserve. Most governments implied in the war against Syria are gas exporters that compete for crossing this strategic territory. We will now connect with Hisham News to have news from that side of the world. Hello, colleagues. Greetings, friends. Syria, besides its important oil and gas fields, has an important geographic position because it shares borders with Turkey, Lebanon, occupied Palestine, and Jordan, which connects important sources of gas from the Middle East and Iran with Europe through the Mediterranean Sea. So the terrorist war that Syria is undergoing, among other things, is mainly due to its strategic geographic position on the coast of the Mediterranean and its potential as a hub towards Europe. In 2009, Bashar al-Assad announced the implementation of the 4C strategy, with which Syria was about to consolidate as a privileged passage for hydrocarbon transportation between the Persian Sea, the Black Sea, and the Mediterranean Sea, then the Baltic Sea, which would leave U.S. out of these channels. In 2009, Syria rejected Qatar's proposal of building an oil pipeline that travels Saudi Arabia and Jordan before arriving to Europe. This proposal would have impaired Russia, strong Syrian associate that provides most of the gas consumed in Europe. In 2010, the Syrian president accepted to participate in another project proposed by Iran, a channel of 1,500 kilometers long that would cross Iran and Syria and turn the Arab country in an important platform before reaching Europe. Russia, in its turn, has designed South Stream and North Stream gas ducts, while the United States, to avoid Russian influence zones and press on Black Sea reserves and Asian reserves, proposed Nabucco gas duct. Most countries implied in the Syrian war are gas exporters that compete for crossing Syrian territory to export its gas production to Europe. Qatar and Saudi Arabia, with logistic support of Turkey, finance and provide weapons to Daesh and Nusra in Syria. The United States, together with the secret British and French secret services, train and finance armed groups they called moderate armed opposition, aimed to defeat the legitimate Syrian government. Iran and Russia, with Lebanese resistant movement Hezbollah, added to the Syrian struggle and compensated the weight of the United States in the international board. Syria has become a scenario of an internal war between the great powers and its regional Arab allies that defend their geopolitical and energy interests in the Middle East. Finally, it is essential to clarify that Washington and its European allies and its energy interests seek to divide the Arab world to strengthen Israel and defeat Syria, which is the cradle of resistance to Israeli occupation and the head of the struggle against imperialism in the Middle East. This is all for today. Listening to the report of our correspondent Hisam Wanous, we ask how many battles will governments like Syria must have in this dispute. And watching closely to the last political movements of the United States versus the European market, what Russian authorities respond with such firmness is gas used as a political coaction weapon? Is the European Union exclusively dependent on Russia? We ask these questions and make a pause to answer them. Energy safety in the dispute for gas in our program today. We will add, as usual, webpage. The Russian webpage Sputnik, unexpected victim of Chinese game against gas. And under the title, it says that the 10% tariffs that were introduced by China to GLP of the United States is a very harsh strike that of China against the United States. This is the opinion of Russian journalist Dmitry Lekuk, who says that according to Reuters, China imported 1.6 million tons of GLP from the United States in 2018. That amount is 11% of all the GLP supply from the United States. Applying this measure comes in a very untimely moment for the United States, because it expects that in 2018 China will become the largest GLP importer, and by displacing Japan and South Korea. The Chinese market has space for all, even U.S. gas, if the U.S. establishment would behave well. This is what the journalist said. Is it casual that countries with important reserves in the Middle East have been penetrated by death and war? What happens? What relation does it have? It has all. And we will see the details. 42% of the total gas in the world is located in the Middle East. That's why it's easy to see this region's strategic value and understand the most political conflicts there. Syrian President proposed the 4C project that was a gas duct to connect the Caspian Sea with the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea with the Mediterranean Sea. This would leave outside the channels controlled by the United States. A little before the Arab Spring in 2011, Iraq, Iran, Syria, and Russian companies had signed an agreement for the construction of a gas duct with the capacity to transport 110 million gallons per day. The plan remains there when Western powers started financing terrorist groups with the aim to defeat and overthrow a Syrian president. Even with the Allied forces and Syrian government have recovered almost all strategic points. Parallel to the 4C strategy, there was a project approved for the United States to end the fact that Russia is the main gas supplier to Europe. It was about the construction of a new gas duct transporting gas from Qatar to the old company crossing Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Syria, and Israel. It was one of the places, Homs, in dispute between the government forces and the terrorists financed by the West. Let's talk about the relevance of gas as a strategic commodity and where its reserves are. Natural gas is the third energy source in the world. Its domestic, commercial, industrial use is composed of different, especially methane, ethanol, and propane. It's the cheapest and least harmful energy source for the environment. In the domestic level, it is used for cooking, kitchen appliances, and heating systems in temperate weather zones and in the water. For industrial uses, the applications of natural gas complement the electrical generation, petrochemical, agro-industrial, metallurgy, and construction. There are two variables in the market regarding transportation and trade: natural gas vehicles, NGV, and liquefied petroleum gas. The first is used for exclusive use in transport vehicle and lengthens the life of its components. It is provided by station services. In the cases of liquefied petroleum gas, it's the same as the residential use, derived from petroleum and costs much more than NGV. It can be transported at low temperatures in tankers. This energy is limited. Nevertheless, 58 countries have proven reserves since 2013. According data of DPP, British Petroleum, of 2016, the world includes 186.6 trillions of natural gas reserves in the world. 42.5% are in the Middle East, 17.3% in the Russian Federation, 4.1% in South America and Central America, and 0.2% in Trinidad and Tobago. We will now add, with his significant capacity of analysis, Saji Leon Borja, professor of the Inter-American University of Puerto Rico, expert in security, defense, and military intelligence, as well as international topics. We would like to ask, shall we understand gas as an energy weapon, as a silent protagonist of political and geopolitical conflicts? Good afternoon. Thank you for your invitation. Yes, it's a very important resource, as you have said in your introduction. It is one of the future energy sources of industrialized countries, undoubtedly European Union, Turkey, China, since it is the cleaner fuel than oil or coal, and process it would be much cheaper than energy plants that process clean coal, but as I understand, it would be much higher in cost. The Syrian war can be partly deemed as the interest of the United States of destabilizing this country. One of the reasons would have been that it did not reach an agreement. The Syrian president did not reach an agreement with Tel Aviv to resolve the Golan Heights. But another topic would be the fact that Syria decided to participate in a gas duct that would have communicated on one hand Qatar and Saudi Arabia, and as you know, Qatar has the third world's natural gas reserves after Russia and Iran. And from Qatar, it would communicate with Saudi Arabia and then to Jordan, and which have participated in the conspiracy of financing terrorist groups in Syria. And from Syria, it would have gone to Turkey, another reason why the Turkish government was interested in changing the Syrian government, because Syria refused this plan. It is clear that the United States supported imported it, and the other gas duct was Iran, Iraq, Syria, that would take natural gas from Iran through Iraq to Syria, and from Syria, according to diagrams and designs published in the press, it would have crossed the south of Turkey in the Antalya Gulf, and then it went directly to European markets through Greece. And we saw that the Turkish government didn't favor this plan. And another plan that United States allegedly favored was to avoid Iran's natural gas and connect Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Iraq, and allegedly to Turkey, avoiding Syria, or perhaps passing by the northeast part of Syria that the United States is illegally occupying east of the Euphrates, and around 20 illegal bases. That stretch would have been perhaps more dangerous for the Turkish because of the PKK, the Kurdish Workers' Party that could have sabotaged the gas duct favored by the United States if it passed by the northeast of Turkey. It would have been preferable, the other one, passing by Syria and Saudi Arabia, Jordan. But things changed because, as we know, last year there was a dispute that is still effective until now, and we know that Qatar has the third main natural gas, and Qatar is associated with the king that is the author of the genocide war since 2015 and the murder of journalist Khashoggi. In Turkey, the plan of one possibility would be that the gas duct Iran, Iraq, Syria be reborn to transport also natural gas from Qatar through Iran. Let's not forget that Iran has closer relations with Qatar after the threats by Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates. They would have a common point with Iraq because Turkey has a collaboration treaty and security defense with Qatar, and even has military bases there. It mobilized mechanized forces to defend Qatar, which is a peninsula, from a possible invasion by Saudi Arabia. That would be one possibility, and this could be extended to Turkey, although probably Turkey would not need much at the time and could use Iranian Qatar gas as a Russian alternative, as a source alternative to Russia. But Russia is supplying much gas through the Blue Stream gas duct with 16 billion cubic kilometers capacity that goes from the north of the Caucasus under the Black Sea, and then goes to Turkey for the Turkish market. But there's the other project, Turk Stream, which will have 2 streams and a capacity of more than 31 billion cubic meters of gas. One branch would go to the Turkish-European side, around 15 billion cubic meters, in addition to the 16 billion of the other branch that is already operating, Blue Stream. This would also go under the Black Sea, and the other branch of Turkish would transport around 15 billion cubic meters of gas to the European southeast, Greece, and probably south of Italy. Perhaps Serbia, Hungary to the north. And this is a situation that United States, as you well know, would like to replace Russian gas in Europe. But as you can see, Russia is very well advanced with gas ducts through Turkey that would also be taken to the Southeast Europe. And there's also the North Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2 that is being built. The number 1 has a capacity of 55 billion cubic meters of gas with 2 branches. The second branch of Nord Stream 2 would take up to 110 billion cubic meters of gas per year. And they're talking about Stream 3 because it seems there's an important gas flow in Groningen in the Northern Sea with an annual capacity of 256 billion cubic meter of gas per year. But that would be reduced by 2020, and by 2022 would have scarce capacity and probably stop operating by 2030. With a capacity that is under the annual production, for example, of Qatar or Canada. I think Canada is 150 billion cubic meters per year of production. So in this sense, Russia and the Europeans, since they see Russia as an energy partner, are well established to supply these needs, and the United States has a very difficult position, more yet if we include Iran, and the apparent interest of European Union is to help Iran sell or benefit without affecting these paralyzing sanctions and destabilizing sanctions that the United States is imposed. And the worst will come in November against Iran. And Europe does not want Iran to leave the agreement that the United States refused. And Netanyahu is the person who handles U.S. foreign policy. So it would be difficult for the United States that Russia and Iran export from Europe and Turkey. It would be very difficult for the United States to keep Russia from concluding these ambitious projects, not only Nord Stream 2, which is and 3 that I think is at Portas. I would like to ask you, what about the Israel's ambitions and the disputes with Lebanon and Palestine for important natural gas reserves along the Gaza Strip? And in many cases, there have been clear violations of international law. Yes, they are claiming a large gas deposit in the Mediterranean and Levantine. Israel has called it Leviathan. They even have the platform. I think they've mobilized the Navy to defend it against any kind of attack, and they are collaborating with the Greek ship, which is mostly Greek, because they also have deposits and claims in the Mediterranean near the fields that Israel is claiming for itself, and that it seems would be shared with Lebanon. And there's a problem there, and we'll see what happens, because Turkey is not happy with Leviathan, the field that is claimed by Israel, and is not happy with the Greek Cypriot attitude of exploiting gas deposits in the Mediterranean together with Israel, because their argument is that they are excluding the Cypriot Turkish people, and that they consider that they will exploit gas and benefit by excluding the Turkish Cypriots that are also part of Cyprus. So this is a delicate situation, The Turkish president has shown his interest of supporting Palestinians in Gaza. It seems that he supports Hamas in Gaza, which is the strong political party. Let's not forget that Hamas belongs to the Muslim Brotherhood, this Islamic moderate political movement that are Sunnis. And in this sense, we'll see how Turkey reacts. And let's not forget that Turkey is in good terms, or at least it has a good dialogue with Turkey, also because of Syria. There's the defense of Turkey, of Qatar, which is has the third largest reserves of the world. And we must see if there's any agreement or initiative of collaboration of this Euro-Asian troika, Russia, Turkey, Iran, that are collaborating for peace in Syria. They should also talk about the interests of Lebanon. They have a strong ally, Hezbollah, the strong Lebanese political party that has participated in liberation of Syria from terrorism that United States, Israel, Saudi Arabia, UK, France, Germany, and others, Jordan, and others have been supporting. So there are other factors. Egypt has also discovered natural gas in the Nile. There's the Russian corporation, the largest of the world, that is interested in exploiting these Egyptian fields, and they would like to build a nuclear reactor, as Russians are already doing with Turkey. Of course, I think it's their first nuclear reactor, and it's part of an ambitious plan of having a network of nuclear reactors for energy security. So the role of Russia and Turkey in these aspects of natural gas, as we see in the case of Syria, it seems it has concluded the worst part, although its territory is illegally occupied by the United States. And Al-Qaeda is still there, apparently supported by the United States. And Turkey, in its last attack, reported by Russia with weapons from the U.S. Marine War, was conducting 3 crafts that allegedly were conducted by Al-Qaeda, allegedly financed by Washington. We must include that the United States tried to start an attack that's naming a bath with human-operated equipment. This gives the impression that they want the Russian to attack first. Russia refrains from doing that, but of course the United States would probably want to restrict these agreements of natural gas between Iran, Turkey, and Russia, including Qatar. That we must not remember that Qatar is an ally of the United States, but right now is opposing Bahrain and Saudi Arabia, which are allies of the United States. It is very complicated and many things can happen, but the truth is that even if the United States could support Israel with Leviathan, if there's an insecure war situation because Turkey refuses or objects, or we should see if Turkey, Russia are willing to defend Lebanon's sovereign interests. Lebanon has Hezbollah, but Israel is a huge military power, even if it's small, supported by the United States. I think the United States is going to save $38 billion in weapons and more than 3.5 annual billions in weapons. I don't remember the figure exactly. But these are Israeli ambitions of natural gas that do not doubt it. They would try to take all they can, as they did with a good part of Palestine, and In the midst of this complex and diverse situation, what is the role of the European Union that, according to several authorities, they want to diversify their supply sources? Do they have a better option than the Russian one? Or will they prefer the proposal of creating a central agency that centralizes the purchase for all European Union countries and distribute to each one? Yes, that would be part of the proposal of the initiatives that conduct a future government, some kinds of a European United States, but that depends the sovereign national interests of the member countries. That will be 27 with the exit of the UK. They have been talking the famous Article 3 and later a gas document to rule upon economic trade energy activities in Europe, and that would ask for a country that is producer, supplier, that control gas duct, and controls supply companies inside national countries. Gazprom is opposed to this Article 3 because the idea of the European Union is to have a neoliberal system with free competition without production, supply, and sale monopoly. But of course, if the Russians offer Austria, Germany, Hungary, Slovenia, Croatia, Italy at a good price, Holland, for example, that Holland is being benefited by the Nord Stream. So even the UK, that we're talking about expanding the Netherlands Nord Stream to England. So we should see what is there for the European countries. I think it depends on the best price, the economic terms for each country. And there, the market laws will be imposed in the end. And at present, that plan would not work unless they accept a mechanism whereby the European countries has the first choice at the best price. Of course, the United States would want Europe not to purchase from Russia through the gas duct and to purchase LGP. The United States is the world's main LGP producer, according to the 2014-2015 report. But by these years, it produces 776 billion cubic meters of gas, but the United States doesn't have the main reserves. It's 9 trillion 600 and something billion of reserve. Venezuela, according to the same data, 2014, 2015, 16, Venezuela would have 9 trillion and something, 100 or 260 billion cubic meters of gas under the United States in reserve. But Russia has reserves of around 48 trillion cubic meters of gas, followed by huge reserves in Qatar, 24.5 trillion. So the United States is producing a lot, probably for its own consumption, but there could be one day when it runs out of reserves. They would resort to rock gas, but Russia would find more in the Arctic Sea that would benefit more European markets through North Stream in the peninsula of Yamal. So we will see what happens. What is true is that Europe will continue needing energy. Energy is hungry for energy, and they are saying that with the closure of old thermal electric coal or oil stations, the closure of atomic stations in Germany and France, and at the same time the increase of population, the energy consumption, and the increase of corporate activity, there will be more need of natural gas. That is the choice they've made as the cleanest fuel. There is Russia, and as I say, Russia is much more advantageous than the United States because LGP in the United States will cost much more because they must be transported in very remote conditions after liquefying it, and then at destination they would have to turn it into gas again. That would cost much more. So I would say that the market laws will be applied. Europe can always purchase LGP from the United States as it purchases it from Qatar. But as we mentioned, Qatar could also export gas through gas duct. That plan would be discarded, but it would be through Iran and then through European markets. The Europeans would consume Russian gas. The Russians talk about 60% of the European gas market, and I think they're providing 32% right now, and they want to help Iran to overcome U.S. sanctions, so they remain in the nuclear agreement. They want to purchase gas from Iran and develop its gas sector, because I understand it is not much developed, or could be better developed, but because of former year sanctions, the Iranians were unable to get investments to develop it. I think there are more oil exporters than gas, but I repeat, they have the second world's reserve, and this could be used as an alternative source for Russia. And there's another thing. Russia is exporting to Europe in large amounts, but the Siberian power that will be sold to China is about to start. China, with its huge industrial production and consumer needs for energy, in time will consume a large part of Russian gas. I don't know if Russia wants to sell 40% to China, Japan, and South Korea, LGP. In any case, there's lots of gas and many possibilities that Europe has to choose. Russia, Iran, Qatar, the United States, and others, and whoever wants to sell, Algeria, Nigeria. They say Nigeria has huge non-developed gas reserves. Professor Lajos, thank you very much for your connection, full of data and clarified, and this makes a difference. Thank you very much for your time.
Siempre un placer. Gracias por invitarme.
El placer ha sido nuestro. Allí teníamos entonces una
explicación. So we had a broad explanation of the interests and how they cross. What about transnationals, these mega platforms that seek to control and are operating in situ? We have this for our second part of the analysis. A last pause, and we'll be back.
Brazilian citizens casted their vote in general elections. To elect their president, Telesur brings you all the developments of the event from the giant of South America. We are connected with you on our website and social networks. Coverage Brazil Decides 2018. Second round vote, only on Telesur, the news source of Latin America and the Caribbean. nos informa desde Bogotá. Saludos, Paola. ¿Qué es lo último que se...
Detallemos las principales empresas de gas.
To the main oil corporations.
Gazprom, compañía estatal
Gazprom, a
rusa, es
state
considerada la
Russian
más importante
company
de
deemed the
todas.
most
El
important of
28 de
all.
junio de este
On
año,
June
el
28 this
presidente de la
year,
empresa,
the
Alexei
president of the
Miller, dijo
corporation,
que con casi
Alexei
100
Miller,
millones de
said that with
toneladas, ese consorcio energético
100
tiene las mayores reservas
million tons,
probadas de
that energy
hidrocarburos del
consortium
mundo. Agregó
has
que
the
esas
world's
reservas superan
largest
en
proven
50%
reserves
el
of,
total de las reservas
and
de las grandes
exceed
empresas de
50%
petróleo
of
y
the
gas, como son
total of
ExxonMobil,
all
PetroChina,
corporations
British
like
Petroleum,
ExxonMobil,
Shell y Chevron.
PetroChina, Shell, and
Estados Unidos tiene
Chevron,
como principal
BP.
firma ExxonMobil. Se describe a sí
United
misma como la
States
compañía
main
internacional más grande
corporation
que
is
cotiza en bolsa. Su
ExxonMobil,
influencia
that
sobre los
is
diversos
the stock
gobiernos que
market's
pasaron por la
main
Casa
company.
Blanca quedó más en evidencia
Many
cuando Rex Tillerson fue secretario de Estado de Estados
CEOs
Unidos
passed
tras
by
ser
the
10 años
White
director
House,
ejecutivo de la empresa. En
like
Oklahoma está
Stiller,
la compañía de gas
the,
más poderosa de
the most
Estados Unidos y al mismo
powerful
tiempo una de
U.S.
las más
oil
importantes del
company
mundo.
has
Chesapeake
its
se
seat in
concentra en el gas natural
Oklahoma
no convencional.
and
Europa
is
tiene una altísima dependencia del gas
focused on
ruso. Casi el
non-conventional
32% de lo que usa ese
natural gas.
continente proviene del país que conduce
Almost
Vladimir Putin.
50%
Alemania,
of
Polonia, Hungría, Austria y
Europe's
Bulgaria reciben de Rusia más del
gas
60%
receive
del
more
gas que
than
consumen cada una.
60% of
El
gas they
gobierno de Estados
consume.
Unidos está muy
The U.S.
preocupado por el Nord
government is
Stream 2,
highly concerned by
macroproyecto en un
Nord
estado
Stream
vicial con la
2, a
rusa
macro
Gazprom al
project
frente y la
started
participación de
by
otros poderosos
Gazprom
grupos
and the
energéticos
participation
como
of
los alemanes
other
Uniper y
important
Wintershall, la
German,
austríaca OMV, la francesa
Austrian,
Engie y la
French,
anglo-holandesa Shell.
and
El
Dutch
Nord 2 significaría tender
oil
una conducción de
corporations. This would
1.225
mean
kilómetros de largo por el fondo marino que une la
1,200
salida de Rusia al mar
kilometers
Báltico
long
con la
under
costa
the Baltic
nororiental de
Sea
Alemania,
through
sin
the North
cruzar ningún otro
Oriental
país de
German
Europa del
coast
Este.
without
En más de
crossing
una vez,
any
la
other
Rosalía
Eastern
estadounidense, con
Europe
apoyo de Ucrania y
country.
Polonia,
Once
han
again,
asegurado
the
que esto
United States
socavaría
have
su
assured
seguridad
that this would
energética
undermine
y la
its
estabilidad de Europa en su
energy
conjunto,
security and
mientras
Europe's
Rusia dice que
stability as a
seguirá
whole,
siendo la
while
proveedora más
Russia
fiable
says
para
that it will
Europa.
be
La
the
Casa
most
Blanca ha anunciado
reliable
posibles
supplier
sanciones
for
para aquellas
Europe.
naciones que se
The White
involucren en el
House has
proyecto. Pese a ello, en mayo
issued
pasado comenzó la
sanctions
construcción
for
al lado alemán. Y
countries
es que
that
Alemania está muy interesada porque el abasto
associates with
seguiría siendo más
Russia.
barato.
Germany
Evitaría
is
que una
highly
disputa entre Rusia y cualquier otro
interested
país afecten el
because
suministro y
of
además
the
podría
cost this
comprar
would meet,
extra y
and
revender a
it
sus
could
socios,
purchase more and
convirtiéndose así
resell to
en
its
centro de
partners,
distribución en el
and it would
continente.
become a distribution center of the continent.
Enlazamos de una vez con nuestro
We
último
will link
invitado,
with your
ingeniero
last
Walter
guest,
Anke, consultor
engineer
independiente en temas
Walter
de energía. ¿Cómo
Anke,
está, Walter? Estamos hablando del
independent
gas como
consultant. We are
arma de
talking
control
about gas as a
geopolítico y
geopolitical
específicamente en esta
control
parte
weapon.
queremos descifrar,
We'd like
queremos
to
mirar más en
find
detalle el
out
accionar de las grandes
the
transnacionales,
action
la
of the great
operatividad de las grandes
corporations,
compañías que
operations
tienen el
of
control
the
energético y si funcionan al
companies
margen
that
de
have
decisiones
energy
políticas y
control,
si de ellas
and
depende la
if they
inequidad que
work
hay
out of
en
political
materia de acceso al gas
decisions.
en el mundo.
Hola, ¿qué tal, Lucía? Como siempre,
Hello,
es un
Lucia.
gusto
As
estar
always,
aquí
it's a pleasure
con
to
el
be
auditorio de
here.
Telesur y saludos a todos
Telesur,
tus hermanos
greetings to all.
latinoamericanos. Pues efectivamente, yo plantearía
I
estas
would
preguntas en el
make these
marco de algo que he
questions
insistido durante
within
mucho
something I have
tiempo, que
insisted
es la
for a
pérdida
long
de la
time, which is the
hegemonía
loss of
estadounidense
U.S. hegemony
para poder dictar las
to
políticas
issue
energéticas,
energy
las políticas
policies,
sociales,
social
las políticas
policies,
económicas, financieras a
and
todo el
economic
mundo.
financial
Y
policies
entonces
to the
hemos
entire
visto un
world.
constante
We have
descenso,
seen a
del descenso
constant
de la hegemonía, la
fall of
pérdida de su
hegemony,
propia
the loss
capacidad
of
de
its own
incidir en
capacity of
diferentes regiones,
influencing in
que
different
ahora
regions
comparte con
that
principalmente
now
el
shares
binomio
mainly with
Rusia-China, y que esto
the
ha
couple
desarrollado
Russia-China.
una política
And
muy
this has
agresiva por parte de la Casa
generated an
Blanca.
aggressive
No
policy
solo,
from the
no
White
solo
House,
desde los
not
tiempos
only
de
from
este personaje muy famoso por sus
since this
declaraciones
famous
bastante
character's
xenófobas y
taking
racistas, que es Donald
office,
Trump, sino
Donald
también
Trump,
desde
but
la
also
época de Barack
from the
Obama,
times of
desde la
Barack
época de los
Obama,
Clinton.
of
Es decir,
Clinton.
este descenso es lo que ha
This fall has
caracterizado
characterized
estas políticas que ahora
these
estamos viendo. Y por
policies we are
supuesto, las compañías, las
listening
compañías
now, and
petroleras, las compañías
oil
de gas,
corporations,
no
gas
son ajenas
corporations
a
are not
este
aligned to
desarrollo
this
de la
development
capacidad,
of
de la pérdida de la capacidad
the
hegemónica
loss
del
of
imperialismo
hegemony
estadounidense.
of the United
Estamos
States.
hablando de que los
We are
países que concentran
saying that
las
both countries
principales
that
reservas de
concentrate the
gas
main
natural son
natural
por
gas
cabeza
reserves
Rusia,
are headed by Russia, followed by Iran, Qatar, United States, Venezuela. And on the other hand, we are seeing that the most productive countries, first Russia, ExxonMobil, Iran, what we are looking at is a dispute, a regional dispute for the control of the main zones. The agreement proposed by President Bashar al-Assad some time ago was substantial to consolidate network supply towards Europe, and that is part of the origin of this conflict that finally took place in Syria. It became a very important mechanism for powers allied to the United States to allow geopolitical control in the zone and avoid LGP supply to Europe from countries that are not aligned with U.S. policy, but mainly that allows strengthening different poles other than those that are disputing hegemony. One thing that the United States was not willing to allow, and we have seen this fatal and sad humanitarian crisis due to the interference mainly of U.S. interests in the Middle East. So ExxonMobil, a U.S. flag corporation, is one of the main producers that is trying to strengthen supply of the gas market that, of course, have generated non-democratic access to this fuel. Because we must also remember that while many people are undergoing or suffering from a high cost of gas supply, both for domestic and industrial use, these capitalists take away huge profit by exploiting reserves in other regions through the war, and finally, this has not allowed to reduce prices to cover the basic needs of the people. The current energy model creates economic, political, and environmental instability. Yes, things have been concealed by the U.S. government. The use of gas as a mechanism of clean energy, as a euphemism that allows no change or not much change regarding renewable resources. It is important to say that the disputes for these hydrocarbons, of course, crude oil, natural gas, and also water, is generating a series of conflicts in the world that had been foreseen by authors in the past as something that would happen at the time the resources starting to be scarce. And they said that whoever took over the resources could stop issuing policies worldwide. In this sense, the United States has a serious problem because different regions around the world attend against U.S. power that was consolidated after the Second World War. And that was started with the policy of Donald Trump. The need to continue generating war in the Middle East. We can't see a solution in the short term for the control of hydrocarbon production. And now these ducts, gas ducts, oil ducts that cross the Mediterranean Sea to supply Europe or to strengthen relations with Asian countries. Unfortunately, this will be constant, and we're looking how Donald Trump is blackmailing the world constantly to meet the agenda of that nation and the main oil corporations of the United States. And operators who have appropriated oil fields, crude oil, and water sources. We see these companies as the main suppliers of this of the United States and guarantee the geopolitical, territorial control and ownership, because in capitalism, property is power. So while these imperialistic powers own these resources through war or through violence, the poor distribution of wealth will continue, and it will continue being an oppressive, accumulating system that has no future for most part of the population. Thank you very much. We've reached our final part. The United States doesn't want to lose its hegemony, and especially when it faces other powerful geopolitical stakeholder that develops ambitious projects to supply, for example, European countries. New geopolitical confrontations could come out between rich hydrocarbon regions and other hungry hydrocarbon regions. This creates political and environmental stability. And now we see energy is synonymous of development and also peace. Dispute for gas, another element of the world's geopolitical map. Thank you.